wonder when they buy them, just how do they know what sort of quality they're getting? And also, when they take the spices home, what is the best way to keep them? The important thing to remember about spices is that they get their flavours from the volatile oils that are contained in the cell structure of the spice. If you take a whole seed spice, say like coriander seed, and you smell that, you're not going to notice much aroma. And the main reason for that is that the aromas are all encapsulated in the cell structure of that whole coriander seed. If you take coriander seeds and you crush them and you grind them to a powder and then you smell them, you'll notice that the aroma is quite strong. And that's because in breaking them up, you've broken up the cell structure and you're starting to release those volatile oils. Now, of course, we use spices in both their whole and ground form. We usually add whole spices to a dish when we want that spice flavour to infuse into the dish, but we don't want to discolour it with little pieces of spice. You might be making an Asian soup and you want the liquid to remain quite clear, so you would use, say, a whole piece of star anise in that, rather than using ground star anise that would make the soup look muddy. We also find that when a spice is in its whole form, it will have a longer shelf life. And that's because it's nature's perfect package. And we say to people that on average, a whole spice, say like whole coriander seed, whole cumin seed, dill seed, etc., star anise, all of the whole spices will have a shelf life of at least 3 years when they're stored correctly. And I will tell you about storage. When a spice is ground, then it will have a shorter shelf life, probably somewhere between 12 to 18 months. Now, of course, for both whole and ground spices, the quality that they maintain will depend very much on how well they have been stored. And the main rules about storage of spices is that spices should always be stored away from extremes of heat and light and humidity. Heat, of course, will drive out the volatile oils and the flavour will be lost. Light is also the enemy of spices because ultraviolet light actually makes volatile oils oxidise more rapidly. So your spices are always best kept in a pantry or in a space where they're not getting direct light and especially direct sunlight on them. And last but not least, humidity. If spices are in a humid environment, that will tend to make them deteriorate more rapidly because of the additional moisture content. You may hear some people say to store your spices in the fridge or freezer. Definitely not. And the main reason why you should not do that is when you take your spice package out of the fridge or freezer, you will get condensation forming on it. That condensation will introduce extra moisture in the form of what we call technically water activity. And that increased water activity will mean that the volatile oils in your spice will actually oxidise more rapidly. So very important, just store them at normal ambient temperature in a cool, dark place. What sort of container should you put a spice in? Well, you can keep spices in jars. Glass jars are very good for storing spices in. However, the main thing to remember is that with a glass jar, you will have all of this headspace of air. And every time you use the spice and more air comes into contact, you are constantly keeping the spice exposed to more air, and of course the oxygen in the air makes the spices oxidise more rapidly. And as your spice level goes down in the jar and you have less and less, your spice is going to go off more quickly. And that's one of the reasons why at Herbie Spices we pack all our spices in a high barrier resealable pouch. This is made of a very special high barrier material that has a very low oxygen transference rate. For that reason, the volatile oils don't escape, and also oxygen can't get to the spice and make it deteriorate. The other good thing is that when you've used the spice, you squeeze as much air out of the packet as you can, and then zip the little zip seal shut, and then store it away in the dark. And you'll find that when you do that, the spice will easily last up to its best before date. Now, you might say, how do I know it's a good spice when I'm buying it? Well, first of all, if you're buying spices and they're in a package and you pick it up and you smell it and you can smell the spice, it's probably not going to be very good, because if you can smell the spice on the outside of the package it means the volatile oils are escaping. The other thing is you should only buy spices from a reputable spice company, and all spice packaging should have a best before date marked on the label. Now, the best before date is not a use by date. You can use the spice after that period of time. But what the best before date tells you is an indication as to the optimum period of time that that spice will have its best flavour for. After that period of time, the spice profile will deteriorate a little, won't actually go off, and it still can be used, but it won't be as bright and as good as it should be. Don't forget, spices are an agricultural commodity. Like any other agricultural commodity that you purchase, the quality of a spice will be affected by where it's grown, the soil and climatic conditions in that place where it's grown, the harvesting methods, how well it's been harvested, the post-harvest handling and cleaning of the spice, the further storage, transportation, shipping, the way that spice is ground, the way that spice is then packaged for sale, the way that spice is then distributed out to the people who sell it. All of those factors will influence the quality of the spice that you buy. And last but not least, don't forget, everybody who you talk to about almost any product in the world will tell you that theirs is the best. The only way for you to be the judge is for you to understand what you're buying. And the best way to do that is smell your spices every time you use them. So when you're using a spice, you might be putting a teaspoon of this in a dish or a pinch of that. Just have a smell. Just enjoy those pleasant aromas. And you'll find that by smelling the spice every time you use it, you will become familiar with it, you'll understand that spice. You'll also find that you'll recognise it. You'll also find you'll become more confident when you're using it in cooking, because you'll get a feel for how that aroma of the spice goes with the other aromas in the food that you're cooking. And so you will become the judge. You will know when you open a packet of spice and you smell it, you'll know how good it is, whether it's as bright and as fresh as it should be. And don't forget, if you need any information at all about spices, please go to our website, which is herbies.com.au, and you can always send us emails and be in touch with us to find out any of your important spice questions. Enjoy your spices, and I'll be look forward to talking to you again.